I'm Mike Hojnowski, also known as Hojo, KD2EAT, advisor for the radio club at Cornell. The club at Cornell, by the way, has been doing really well all of a sudden. We have students who want to talk on the radio, which is amazing. And the advisor for 14 years, and this is like, 12 years, and this is the first year we have students going in and just getting on the radio. They did huge at school club roundup, and they actually got on HF. One of them was in there doing the X competition over the weekend and made 60 some odd contacts. So anyway, so the Cornell club's doing really well. One of the things that we do quite often are balloon launches, in particular because the advisor of the club is really interested in balloon launching. It tends to happen. So I want to talk a little bit about a new thing that we were going to try out actually with the eclipse coming up called Wenet. And I had planned to launch a balloon during the eclipse, but now it turns out that I'm getting my knee replaced the week before that. So I won't be doing the balloon launch a week after knee replacement. So Wenet is a technology for basically sending images down from the balloon. And ordinarily in the balloons, we have a payload with a camera, and that's great, but there's no immediate gratification. We launch the balloon, it's in the air for a couple hours, and we have to go find it. If we find it, we have to retrieve it, if we can retrieve it. And then after that, we can pull images off the SD cards. So we've had a desire to have more immediate gratification. I've done a few video payloads where we download, basically analog TV video type things. But the payloads are complex and they're expensive, and the video quality isn't great. I tried a video payload a couple of times. Wasn't really satisfied with the results. So image download is a lot simpler, and there's a bunch of different technologies for downloading images one at a time. So some of the older protocols out there, SSTV, some of you might be familiar with, SSDV over LoRa, and I'll talk a little bit about this. So SSTV, I get this out of the way. You can see the stunning image quality you get from SSTV typically. It's 640 by 480. It runs in the audio bandpass for a radio. So the nice thing is you can hear it. You can use any old radio to work with it. Downside is you get image quality like you see here, which ain't great. Each image is several minutes per image. And in a balloon flight that's going to last 90 minutes or so, you want to bang down as many images as you can. And frequently there are issues with image registration or orientation. You see how this whole image is kind of skewed. That's really common with SSTV. And if you drop packets, they're just gone. You don't get that data. So some folks came up with digital SSTV, and that's a pretty cool technology. But it has its limitations. The original SSDV, which is digital, still worked in the audio bandpass, so you're still limited in how much data you can get down. But the spec is great for resolution. You can have up to 4080 by 4080 bits, which is huge. But if you're transmitting that many bits over essentially a 300 baud connection, it could be the whole flight. You might get 2 pictures, right? So, but another cool thing about SSDV is that it's packetized. Each the image that's sent is broken up into packets. The packets can be received by multiple different receivers. And then there's an aggregating receiver where you send them across the internet to one place. So basically, if anybody receives a packet, it goes to the mothership essentially. And as long as somebody receives each packet, all the packets get received and you get the full image. So unlike SSTV, where if you lose a packet, you just don't see it. And if you have 3 people receiving, you got to hope one of them got all the packets, so they at least got a decent picture, but it doesn't do any kind of aggregation. Whereas with the digital stuff, you can actually combine packets from different sources to build your image, which is pretty cool. So a guy in the UK added an innovation to that and started doing SSDV over LoRa, which is a spread spectrum protocol using about 125 kilohertz typically. LoRa is proprietary, so you're not going to have a radio that you can just dial to that frequency and listen. And it's obviously much wider than an audio bandpass. But the baud rate gets increased significantly. And again, it's piled onto that same protocol that can handle really large images. But even at 125 kilohertz with the way LoRa works, it takes about 5 minutes for a 1080p quality picture. So most people use a lower quality, so it's not 1080p. And so I think this one was maybe a 640p or whatever, slightly less quality image, but still, not bad. But it still takes a pretty long time. So, but again, SSDV over LoRa is packetized. So again, you can have essentially multiple receivers. So some guys in Australia who are really sort of pioneers for a lot of this stuff, for Project Taurus, decided to come up with their own protocol. And it's about a 300 kilohertz protocol. So you're going to need an SDR to receive it. You're not going to be able to receive it with a standard radio. But it's doing 115K bits per second. It's using FSK modulation with a strong forward error correction. So it's correcting bit errors. So a receiving station maybe will be able to correct bit errors as they come in. And it transmits at about 50 milliwatts. I'm using 431 megahertz in this area, which is in the ATV band, according to the ARRL band plan. And since nobody uses ATV anyway, it's safe to chew up 300 kilohertz there. The time per image for that is about 30 seconds, which starts to get nice. If you're flying a balloon, you're getting an image down every 30 seconds. That's pretty cool. It's packetized, just like SSDV is, and it can be sent to a central site. And that URL is just the URL that's where they talk about it all and have their software. So, so it looks like I duplicated some of that information here, but the work was done by David Rowe and Mark Jessup in Australia. I talk with Mark almost every day online, either in the morning or at night. And he's a great guy and does some phenomenal work. So here is a sample image from a flight that I did last September. Now, unfortunately, this one didn't get downloaded, or it was sent but not received because we didn't have our receive station working very well. Greg was with me. I don't know if he's still on the Zoom.
I think he is.
But Greg was, we went to Rochester to launch, and Greg set up a Yagi, and he was receiving until it got out of range. And I had a receive station at Cornell, but the receive station at Cornell never sort of picked it up. So we didn't quite get the entire thing. But this is what the image quality would have been had it been received from the ground. And here you can see the end of Cayuga Lake, and I think Seneca's back there somewhere. But that's a typical image for Wenet. So it's a very nice quality image, and an image like this comes every 30 seconds or so. So what does a Wenet payload look like? It's actually not a lot to it. In fact, I've got one right here on the desk. So actually, and only the upper box here is the payload. The bottom box, there's an antenna sticking out the bottom. So the bottom box here is literally just, I'm not squashing the antenna. So the entire payload is in here. And if you look inside, there's not a whole lot in here. Basically all the stuff that's shown on this foil. And it runs off 3 AA batteries.
You show those Zoom people for me?
Yeah, if we can find the
Just put it
camera.
in front of you, or oh, here.
Where are we? I don't know which camera.
Oh, you're on it, right at the top window.
Hello, there we are. There's the payload. So it consists of a Raspberry Pi camera, which I've got taped to the outside. And it's got a Raspberry Pi Zero with a riser board. So these two boards are basically smashed together. So it's just a tiny little board this big. And so this part on the left here is the Raspberry Pi itself, which is running the Wenet software. And the riser board is basically, it has a radio chip on it, which sends the data. And so it connects over the riser pins here. And it just connects up to a 70 centimeter antenna for transmission. And also it's got a USB port. So we just have a USB cheap GPS module plugged into it. And then the image, I don't know if we could see it on the previous image, but up at the top here, if it's not cut off, it's kind of cut off under all this stuff. There is a GPS overlay that has the date and time, latitude, longitude, and altitude. So you can just see a bit of it right under there. Move this out of the way and you can see it, a little bit of it there. So that's where the overlay goes. So, each of these gets a little overlay that gives you a little information about the image as well. So that's all there is to the payload. And as I said, I have it right in here, and it's nominally 5 volts. So I run it off 3 AA batteries, ultimate lithiums. And so for a flight, we just put in 3 batteries along with this stuff. And then there's more foam and stuff to protect everything and hold it together. Lately, I've been using those biodegradable packing peanuts. which actually have another feature that we discovered. We had another payload, the exact same thing, that got stuck in a tree near Lock, New York, and it was up there for about 3 months before we got it down. It was like 85, 90 feet up in a tree. And in fact, it was in the perfect place. It was owned by an arborist, that property. The Lampman Family Tree Service in Lock owned the property, and it was like right behind their workshop. But he tried to climb it, and it was so high, he couldn't climb that high. So he ended up taking a portable lift out and rode his lift up and got it down for us. Really nice guy. But when I got the payload back, I opened it up and I had stuffed it right to the top with those packing peanuts. The peanuts had all shrunk down to the size of peas. But what they did is they acted as desiccants. So even though it had been sitting in a tree for 3 months, the electronics were fine, the SD card was fine, with all the images off. It was in great condition. So, and in fact, yeah, so it was amazing. So that was really convenient. So from now on, that's gonna be my go-to is, it's insulation, but also, for those unfortunate events where it gets stuck in the tree for a long time, it may actually help as a desiccant to protect the electron.
So we saw you launch the one balloon at Gigantic that day. So, cause I'm an idiot, I don't understand. You gas it up, you launch it, it goes how high and then it pops and falls
Yeah.
back?
This type of flight, it goes under a latex balloon. They typically go to 100,000 feet or so. And then the balloon pops, and right below the balloon, we have a parachute, so it then parachutes down. And we have prediction software that gives us within a mile of where it's gonna land. So basically what I do is I drive to a location such that it will land around the King Ferry area. Because that's between the lakes, it's very flat, there's a lot of farm country, not a lot of trees. So I sort of reverse engineer where I expect it to land and drive and find a park or a school for the launch location so that we can do that. And this one overshot King Ferry by just a little bit and got into the trees near Lock. So that's what happened with that. So that's what's in the payload, and it's not a very expensive payload. And there's a picture, by the way, for the people who couldn't see it at home. There's a picture from above. And you can see there the Raspberry Pi camera on the outside, the ribbon cable for the camera comes in, the Pi and the riser are right there. UPS connection, just a cheap GPS right there, and the antenna comes out. That's a little bit of stiff coax that goes to a connector on the bottom, and there's just a vertical antenna sticking down at the bottom. It's made out of a piece of piano string with a few radials made out of welding wire, and the battery. So that's the whole thing. So to receive that, it's a little bit more work. So you have I got so much crap on my screen. How do I need this? So you have an SDR, a little RTL SDR, and that receives the samples and it goes through some demodulation software and gets into packets. The packets and forward error correction are dealt with. The software then reassembles the image and creates a JPEG image. And it does two things. It'll display that image on your screen if you're running the software, and we'll also upload it to the internet to the SSDV website so that all the other sites that are running the same software upload their packages and their packets. And so this website is where the aggregation happens. Anybody who receives a packet, it goes up there and it assembles all the packets and makes sure that it gets all of them for the image. And we're going to do a live demo of that actually. So I'm going to aim the camera back toward the screen. Doug, you're going to be famous. And I'm going to plug it in and give it a few minutes to warm up.
It's something already was famous.
What's that?
It already is famous.
That's right. You're going to be more famous in 2 minutes. So you're going to be internet famous. So that's basically how the software works. And so the software for this reception, I can basically do on my laptop. In fact, I forgot to do it. So here I've got a huge receiving antenna, an SDR, and a USB extension cord, and I'm just gonna plug this into my laptop and get it fired up, and we'll do a demo in a few minutes, and we'll see if we can get it to work. And my laptop will be the receive station, so there's that. All right, so we'll let that figure itself out. So to build a receiving station takes a couple of things. You need a computer that can run Docker. If any of you are familiar with Docker, basically what we do is we package up the receiving software in a Docker container. And that makes it really easy because you can run Docker in Windows or on Linux, on Macs. And you can just take the Docker container and install it, and pretty much it works. You don't have to do a whole lot. So it's pretty slick. All you have to do is configure the frequency that we're using. So computers can run Docker. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi 3B or better, would work fine for about $50. I'm running it on my Linux laptop here for this demo. And you need to buy yourself an RTL SDR. So there's an SDR, $33 on Amazon. For this particular stuff, it does have to be an RTL SDR with the see if I can find it on the description, the RTL 2832U chip. That particular chip, because the drivers use that particular chip. So if you have a weird SDR, that's not one of those. A more expensive SDR probably won't work. It actually depends on using the chipset that's on the cheap SDR. For Wenet, we still recommend some gain, some kind of preamp. So there's a Uputronics, markets through airspy.us, a filtered preamp. The 440 megahertz preamp has actually a wide enough bandpass that even though I'm using 431, the 440 is wide enough that it'll receive it just fine. So I looked at all the specs. So that's $52 for a preamp. And some kind of antenna with gain is preferable, like a Yagi or something. So all in for a receive station, you're talking about $100 plus antenna, or $150 plus an antenna. And it's all sort of reusable stuff that a ham should have anyway. So it's good, not a big investment. Again, the software runs as a Docker image. So the installation is fairly simple. If you're comfortable with Windows command prompt or doing things in Docker, which some people are not, and it is more modern stuff. But if you're comfortable with anything Docker, it's pretty easy to work with. And again, the instructions are really good, and they're on their website, Project Taurus, the Australian guys. So here's what the Australian guys use for a receive antenna. They're serious hardware. So they've got a little 70-centimeter Yagi on a tripod, and it's got a preamp mounted on that tripod somewhere. I think there's a preamp right over here. And it's actually got an Azel rotator on this portable setup. So this is pretty fancy schmancy. But the other thing, and I'm going to talk about tracking in a few minutes, they're actually using the tracker or a tracker with the payload and receiving the telemetry from the payload to aim the antenna. So it's tracking the payload as it flies through the sky. So that's how they do it, and that's pretty slick. That's a nice setup. I'd like to have something like that on my roof. So we did one launch in September, and we had sort of mixed results. It worked okay. Greg set up to receive in Rochester where we launched, and he received it, pretty far down, down range. But when it got above a certain altitude, he stopped receiving it, and he packed it up and left. And the receive station in Cornell had some kind of issue. It should have received it and didn't. So we decided we wanted to shake this down a little bit more. So Kevin Feeney, WB2EMS, offered to use his airplane as a test. So he's been dying to do some kind of testing of this in his airplane, any excuse to get his airplane in the air. So we set up 2 receive stations. We set up one at our home QTH in Trumansburg, and we had another receive station at the W2CXM ground station, which is on top of Rhodes Hall. Rhodes Hall has a high gain, nice big long 70-centimeter antenna. It's about 20 dB of gain on that thing. Mast mounted preamp and an Azel rotator on there. And why is that microphone there? Is that you or me?
I think I did something, I'm sorry.
So
I hit my
bumped your
keyboard.
buttons. All right.
I did.
So and we used Horus binary tracking, which I'll discuss in a bit. But basically with the Horus binary tracking, sending every 5 seconds or so a packet, we were aiming the antenna at Rhodes Hall, and it followed his airplane through the entire flight. So here's a picture out the side of this plane. He just basically put this on the seat of the back seat and aimed it out the window, which is why it's a little foggy looking. It's actually looking out the window. You see the wing of his airplane there. And he flew north along Cayuga Lake, and he went north of the thruway. He got up to about Sodus, and then turned around and came back down the west side of the lake, did a circle over my house, and then went home. So his flight path is here. So you can see he launched from his place down in Danby. He flew up, flew north. And what's interesting is you see the 2 receive stations. We got W2CXM-9 with Rhodes Hall over here. KD2EAT1 is my house. At my house, I didn't have an Azel rotator. I do have a preamp, but I was just using a Comet GP3 dual band antenna on the roof of my house. So not a lot of gain on the antenna, a little bit of gain from the preamp. But the antenna gain apparently matters a lot, because if we take a look, he took off and flew north, and we were receiving every packet, every image, all the way up until about here, north of the lakes. My home station lost it. So I lost his plane, and noticed that I'm closer to where he was than W2CXM is by about 10, 12 miles, right? So my dual band antenna just on my roof was not doing as well as that beam, which has about 20 dB more gain. And he flew up, and I lost him, W2CXM lost him somewhere around here. We stopped receiving Wenet images. Now I would share with you the actual Wenet images we received in download, but I lost them. I was an idiot. I did. I put them somewhere and I can't find them. But I do have the images that were in the SD card of the plane. And I'll show you that in a minute. So he turned around up here. He flew back down. W2CXM picked him up at about the same place again. He flew south. I picked him up about the same place again. He circled over my house and then went home. So that
Did you have a preamp on your?
I do have a preamp, although my preamp isn't on the mast. It's down in the house. So there was 35, 40 feet of coax LMR 400 between the antenna and the preamp.
Now, what is your elevation versus CXM's?
About the same. My elevation at our house on the roof is about 1,000 feet. And I think it's pretty close to the same at the top of Rhodes Hall. So, but there may have been, well, there's not a whole lot of terrain on this side. So yeah, I was gonna say, there might have been a hill in the way, but not the lake right there. There could be some terrain or trees or whatever in my yard that made a difference. Certainly a much clearer line of sight off the roof there than there is out of, my roof in September. So that was the flight path he took, and it was a pretty good result, I thought. And we had in mind thinking about launching for the eclipse. And my thinking was we'd launch somewhere out here for the eclipse around this time of the year. The winds blow west to east. And ideally, what I was hoping is we'd have the balloon at apogee somewhere around here, where we're close enough to receive it from the Cornell station. And with luck, the camera would be pointed back toward the eclipse, and we would catch the totality in one of those pictures, which would just be so sexy. It would be really cool. And then my stupid knee went out. So we were all set to do it, and then blew out my knee. So anyway, whoop, I thought I had an image. Oh, well, there's the image. This is one of the images we received during the flight. So this was actually live in the flight. I didn't have GPS data. There was an issue with the GPS in that payload subsequently. So what's next for Wenet? I want to do more balloon flights with it. I think it's really cool that we get live imagery down during the flight, because especially when we're working with the students and we have 20 students come out and they see the launch and then nothing for 2 hours. And then some subset of them have to go back to school, and some of them come for the recovery. And then we do the recovery, and then, someone downloads some images and starts posting them on our Slack at Cornell to get some pictures. But it would be really cool if we had live imagery coming down during the flight. They could get online and look at it. Oh, so the other thing during this is, well, I'll show that with the demo. But let me talk about next steps and then we'll do the demo. So I want to do more balloon flights, obviously. I had to cancel the Eclipse flight. We're likely to launch over the summer. Jules and I are going to the Great Plains Super Launch in Colorado. I go every year. A whole bunch of nut jobs like me go get together, and we do a day of technology forums about balloons and telemetry and technology. And then we do a mass launch on Saturday, and we launch like a dozen high altitude balloons all at once, and we all hop in our cars and we go chase them, and get to meet local farmers and whoever else, wherever the balloon land. We met a very nice farmer in the last year in Huntsville, Alabama. And of course, my payload was 90 feet up in a tree. And after multiple attempts to get it down, the farmer lent us a shotgun. He yelled out. And one of the guys who came out with us does competitive ski. So I said, yeah, I don't know nothing from guns. So but unfortunately, the farmer only had like 5 shells. He gave us everything he had. And we went out there and he tried to shoot the payload, and he just missed. And so that payload is still in the tree in Alabama. But it was a fire and forget test. It was not important. I get that.
I don't even want to think about that.
What's that?
We
Just speculating what the package would look like after a couple of loads.
There's the payload.
I come down with confetti and foam, but
Heavier shot, to pull it down.
yeah, and in fact, this one, I didn't even have any cameras in, so it's not like, I don't care what happens, give me the SD card, just miss the SD card. But yeah, that one, there wasn't even a camera, so I really didn't intend to recover it at all. But the farmer was so nice and, we're at this group event, so a whole bunch of people showed up with, Jules and I show up and I look at the map and I looked at a GPS view and said, I'm not gonna try to recover that. And suddenly the guy from the local club in Huntsville says, oh, I'm the recovery expert. I like to climb trees and stuff. Let's go. So, okay, let's go. We met the farmer, nice guy, went out to his woods, looked up the tree, thought, oh, no climbing that. But I'll shoot at it.
You need to borrow Joe's spud gun next year.
Yeah. Well, I've got a arborist's bag launcher and it'll launch a bag 100 feet. Yeah, after having 2 payloads in a row get stuck 80 feet in the tree, I got a serious launcher. So I'd like to do some more launches. I'll probably launch one in the summertime. And in the fall, the students are hoping to do a balloon launch and we'll probably put Wenet on that balloon launch. And as I said, since it's using SSDV and the more receivers we have, the more better it is. So if anybody's interested in setting up a Wenet receiver and playing along with us, you saw the pieces. Like I said, it's about $150 worth of stuff every ham should have anyway. So
I've got a ground station all set. I can't wait to try.
yeah, Doug and Greg have set up ground stations already. And so, but if anybody else is interested, let me know. So let's see if this demo is going to work. So I'm actually going to open up a shell session here. And so I plugged in my SDR. So I'm going to launch the Wenet Docker container, and that's really all I have to do to start Docker. And then I'm going to launch Firefox. And it opens up a connection, and you'll see it's already starting to receive packets. It's been receiving packets for a while. And now that I have Docker up, we're downloading, and you see how fast the image is coming down. So it's just boom, boom, boom. That's pretty peppy and it's pretty quick. And then as soon as it finishes that one, it'll just start the next one. So that's how fast it is coming down from balloon in flight. Now what's cool is, as I said, this aggregates. So I'm just showing you on this web page right here is what my computer is getting. But if we go to, I talked about sending stuff to the mothership, ssdv.habhub.org, the images also get sent up there. In fact, oh, there was a flash of my office and at home, but you see the packets are going to this website that anybody can open anywhere. And I told you I was going to make you famous, Doug, internet famous. So there's Doug's smiling face on the Kent. Kent's smiling face on the internet. And so as you scroll down, you just get older images. There's my office from this afternoon when I did some tests and I need to update my calendar apparently. So there's some office, and then I scrolled down a little bit and there was another guy doing some testing. Yeah, here's some other guy. His call sign was GIAMLU, whoever that is. Probably in Europe somewhere. So he was testing. Yeah, so all the images just go up to this central site. So if there were multiple receivers and say I lost a couple of packets, saying I didn't receive these packets, but somebody else did, they would be filled in on this site. So that's how that works. So now I'm going to stop this so we stop sending people's pictures up to the internet.
G1L maybe?
It might have been. So that's stopping the software on my computer, and then I'll just be rude. Instead of logging in, I'm just going to yank the plug.
It works.
Linux doesn't love it, but it'll get over it. So that's how that works. So that's right. So meanwhile, back at the presentation, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I talked about tracking and running some other software. So to back up a little bit, I've been using, where is it? Lately for tracking, I've been using retasked National Weather Service trackers. So twice a day, National Weather Service offices all over the US launch balloons twice a day at midnight Universal and noon Universal. And Buffalo launches these trackers, which are RS-41 tracker. And they land all over the state, but the guts of it, as these RS-41s go, is a little board in there. It runs off 2 AA batteries, ultimate lithiums. It's got a little 70-centimeter antenna, and it's got everything, everything a boy needs. It's got a microcontroller, it's got a GPS, and it's got a transmitter. It's a tracker. So basically, National Weather Service is dropping 2 trackers a day all around, this region. And so for me, these are free trackers coming from Allah that drop out of the sky. All you have to do is reprogram. So
those are the ones they send.
this is
You're
one of the
you're
ones
just
they send.
finding them.
Yeah, so I found one that landed near my house and reprogrammed it, and so I used it as a
Like
tracker.
geocaching tracker.
Yeah. So and it's turned into a sport among people who do this. So there's again the guys in Australia. Mark Jessup wrote this software called Radiosound Auto RX, and it runs on Linux. And basically, you set up a receive station, and it will automatically detect radio songs and put them on the map. And so this is the map, one of the maps, tracker.sound.gov. And you can see on it, there's a balloon in flight that launched out of Albany. And here's a balloon that landed. It launched out of Buffalo, which is a little black circle here, and landed up near Rochester. You see these gray ones, this gray one with an X in it, if you can make it out, is a song that somebody who was chasing them went and tried to recover and deemed irrecoverable. And you can actually update the map and say, couldn't get it. And this other gray one here, someone actually recovered. And if I had the website up, you can actually click on it and see a comment if they wrote one from the person who recovered it. And you'll see these gold dots and green dots are receive stations. So this gold dot here is my receive station in Trumansburg. You see some other gold dots up here, a couple of green dots. So these are all people running Auto RX who are detecting the packets. And again, it's sort of a collaborative effort. If anybody receives the packet, it makes it up to this internet site. And so you can track the balloons coming down. Sure. So here's my home stations receive, and I haven't cleared the website for a little bit. So it's been running for a couple of days. So you can see Buffalo is saturation bombing this area here with radio songs. But you see this is the first one that was dropped down by the south end of Cuca Lake here. But when one drops closer to my home QTH, I'll go look for it. Or at least go get a final position and then look in Google Maps and say, oh, okay, that's in the middle of the woods, I'm not gonna bother. Or that's in a farm, I'll go talk to the farmer and see if I can go find it. And Jules and I have done that numerous times. Always seems like it's when I'm having a surgery. My first knee replacement, one landed literally across the street in Trumansburg.
And I went and got it,
Yeah,
trying not to fall in the canal.
right over the creek that goes through, it was hanging off a roof, right there in downtown Trumansburg, hanging right over the creek. And Jules collected that one because I was home with my knee up. And we had another one where right after my hip surgery, one landed in an open field, and Jules had to walk out and get it because I couldn't walk because I had my hip replaced. I'm on a buy 3 get 1 free joint replacement. Black tip will be free. So anyway, so I've been using these repurposed songs. There's software out there to reprogram them. So here's what one of these radio songs look like. Like I said, everything a boy needs. It's got a microcontroller buried under the battery holder there. This is just the front and back. This is two of them next to each other. There's a couple of batteries. It's got a GPS, a U-Block 6 GPS module sitting there. It's got a SI 4032 radio chip sitting there. But this radio chip really only works between the chip and the bandpass filter. It really only works in the 400 to 450 megahertz range. So when we reprogram these, they can do APRS, but they can only do 70 centimeter APRS. So we have to set up a special receive station for it. It comes out of the sky with a temp and humidity sensor, but nobody's written software to use these sensors yet. So I just disconnect it and throw it in the pile. Someday we'll reverse engineer how that sensor works, and that'll be fun to have too. And then there's an expansion header on the back end, this little header down here, and that's where we plug in to reprogram it. So all you need to reprogram it is some know-how and the right hardware. The backpack of magic toys.
Mary Poppins bag.
Indeed.
Mary Poppins bag.
I put it in the bag. Promptly ate it. It might be. Yeah. Not important. There's a little dongle, it's called an ST link, it's a little USB, it's like the size of the thumb drive. And it plugs into USB port and has wires on the other side, and you can plug those wires, if you do it correctly, into this programming header, at which point you can download the firmware to it. So, what I've been using is Horace Binary, which is a protocol that they wrote down in Australia. And basically it uses the GPS. It sends at 100 baud 4 FSK with basically 50% forward error correction. So it's got a ton of error correction. It performs about 20 dB better over APRS for tracking. So I set up a receive station in my house and I can receive packets in Buffalo from balloons. It's amazing. And that's transmitting at 25 milliwatts. You know, if you got line of sight to it, you're basically gonna get it. There's add-ons to it to use a BMP 280 pressure sensor. And if you look on the back of that foam box, there's a pressure sensor glued taped on. That's the expansion sensor I put on it. You have to run again some software to receive it, but again, I don't know if he's got a Docker container for that one, but it's not too difficult. And it basically decodes really well with just a basic station, an SDR, and an antenna. It doesn't need any kind of gain. It receives beautifully. And there's some public domain firmware out there. There's a couple versions of it. Mikael, I won't try to pronounce his name, from Finland, has what I think is the better version, and it supports APRS 70 centimeter, Horace Binary CW. And again, if you put a little riser board with a different transmitter chip on it, it supports JT965, JT4, Whisper, FSQ, and FT8. You know, it does it all. And the kitchen sink. Subsequently, I've worked with Mikael because software runs on the RS41 tracker. Well, it turns out there's another very common tracker that they fly mostly to the west of us called the DFM-17. It has basically the same microcontroller, the same GPS, you know, everything, just slightly different pinout on everything. So he and I worked together last year and we basically reversed, you know, did the engineering work to make the same code work on both trackers. So basically with a select statement, you say it's a DFM-15 or if it's an RS41, and the same code works on both kinds of tracker now, which is kind of cool. So that really got some people out west who get the DFM-17s all the time very excited to reprogram these and use them. So what does it take to do it? Building the code's kind of a pain. This is not for the faint of heart. You need a Unix build environment. You have to edit a config file, you know, update your call sign frequencies, protocols you want, do a make to compile the code, and then you have to use a little ST-Link device to download it. It's a more computer savvy person's task. I've been working with a few people to make it a little easier to do, from Windows with the Windows subsystem for Linux, and again, a Docker container, and trying to kind of can it so it's a little easier to do. But that's not baked yet. But still, it's not a difficult thing to do, and then you get a really cool tracker basically for free from the net, courtesy of the National Weather Service. So I use those two. And the other cool thing I won't demo because I don't have all my internet stuff working right is some software called Chase Mapper, which basically will, you saw that image a couple back here. Oops, where was it? This one is called Chase Mapper, and it tracks these. And I actually run a copy of this in my car on a portable Raspberry Pi. So the other demo I brought was just to show you what the tracking station is. So if I'm going out and chasing a weather balloon, this is my tracking station. It's a Raspberry Pi. I actually have a little display on it, so it sort of shows the packets as they come in. Got an SDR on the back, and if I'm really going super portable, I'll just screw an antenna into it this way. I also have a mag mount, permanent mag mount on my car, and the wire is hanging in the back seat, and I plug it into a USB power brick. And so I just bring this up, and it boots up, and it automatically connects to the tether on my phone or my tablet. And then I can bring up this map on my phone or my tablet and get the coordinates of the balloon as it's coming in. So if I'm, you know, right on top of it, I can actually be out in the field and watch it land. So using Chase Mapper and either for weather balloons or for the Horus binary, because it works with both. And it's great because you can use one to do practice doing the other. I can track these balloons in the last several launches we've done in this area. Jules and I basically watched the payload land in the field when we got there. You know, it tracks so well and predicts so well. You know, it shows you a little dot on the map where it thinks it's going to land. So you drive there and it'll update the revision, the location as it's coming down. But when it's down below 5,000 feet, it's within a couple hundred yards one way or the other. You just drive and you wait. Well, there it goes. Lands in the
It's
field.
really cool.
Hey,
watching
yeah.
it come down and videotape it. It's really neat.
Is this word going to keep people away with shotguns?
No,
What does it say?
It's a harmless weather
That's
instrument.
right. It's a harmless weather. That's left over from the National Weather Service, and actually, I leave that sticker on my payload. I actually put that on my payload. It's harmless experiment. It's gonna be-
You are now being tracked.
That's right.
For the immediate future.
So anyway, the other nice thing about Chase Mapper, and the reason I mentioned it is I didn't think to put it in the screen grab here, but up in this section of the screen right here, it will have a display which has the current altitude coordinates, and it actually has the azimuth and elevation. And for a Wenet, that's important because with Wenet, you need to be able to aim a Yagi. So while it's coming down, if you have Chase Mapper and you're mobile receiving Wenet, it'll tell you exactly the azimuth and elevation to aim your Yagi to receive the payload. Didn't think to get a snap of it on the screen here, but, so anyway, that's what I do for fun. And that's how geeks party, as I say. So any questions?
Yeah, could you repeat all that again?
Sure, it's on the recording, just hit play.
Thank you.